let's continue. Paragraph 3, I think.
Paragraph 3 of my statement. The purpose of this statement is to inform the Commission of a matter regarding events in 2018 reported to Captain McLean and me in 2022 involving Advocate Andrea Johnson and Major General Khan, Feroz Khan. Commissioners, for context, maybe I should just refer to our investigation in 2020 against, in terms of crime intelligence, and the conduct that was that we experienced at the time, which included the using of the media to put pressure on us when we investigated this matter from crime intelligence. Major General Khan has played a huge role in that. In fact, I have a witness that's still in the program who testified or who has provided me with an affidavit regarding General Dramat at the time, where he was a witness to a conversation where General Khan was also, to place a media report regarding the rendition to get rid of General Dramat, so that, because we were reporting to him directly at the time. So that media report was then placed, and there was a lot of fallout in respect of that. But that is what they are capable of, and that is what they are doing. So I expect no less now than what we went through. That's only one incident that I'm now informing this commission of. There were various other incidents of the same thing in 2011. We have informed the police management at the time of this. I've given so many briefings to police management regarding crime intelligence and the things that they were getting up to. But nothing was done. In fact, we were just, first it was covertly. They tried to stop us covertly, but it later on just became overtly. So between the police and the NPA, we struggled about 15 years, 12 years to get a crime intelligence matter on a roll because of all the interference that we experienced. And I testified to this in the Mkhwanazi Commission as well as the Zondo Commission relating to these incidents. We could have stopped this in 2012 or 2011 if the police had listened to what we were saying to them. Sorry, Commissioner, there was just a little bit context in terms of what we have been experiencing.
Sorry, Colonel, as I understand it, what you really wanted to mention this as to give context regarding this specific incident, that it's not an isolated incident, and the significance of this incident, although it relates to a smaller matter, there were bigger matters that were being investigated.
That is correct, Commissioners. This is a pattern of behavior that I've experienced, and this specific incident just forms part of that pattern of behavior. The impunity, the fact that they think they can get away with it, and they did for a long time. So that it is in that context that I am referring to what happened in 2011, because how do they say, I've seen this movie before.
Thank you, Colonel.
The system of protecting the drug squad, media plays part. Let me rephrase. Journalists within media houses, they are part of this in pushing certain narrative. Why I say this is because a very well-known veteran, Mzilikazi of Africa, had contacted me almost immediately after this incident happened of Mbangeni. It happened beginning of the year last year. I think a month or so, he contacted me. He can come here and confirm that. He contacted me, said, Gerald, I'm hearing that you interfered with the police operation. And what is going on? So I explained to him the details of what transpired. He understood. Then he said, okay, well, there's some stories and there's nothing wrong. So he did not publish that. Later in the year, which I suppose maybe this is why Mkhwanazi is coming to me with this, is that first General Cele calls me, he's a former minister, he calls me and he says the Premier of Gauteng have approached him to go and work in Gauteng to help him fight crime in Gauteng. Therefore, he needs General Khumalo, who is a district commissioner and ex-task force commander in KZN, to come and work with him in Gauteng. And I find it strange because I think he called 2 or 3 times. While I was in a meeting, I kept giving the phone to one Brigadier Abteles who was with me in the meeting. And after that, I had a conversation with General Cele, and then he pleaded with me to release this general to come to Gauteng. And my surprise was, but when General Cele was in the police, he did not like that general, Khumalo. He didn't like him at all. So why now that he's out of the police, he trusts Khumalo to come and work with him in Gauteng? It was just strange. And I turned to my colleague, Jaron Hua, who was with me in a meeting. This was in Durban. Jaron Hua works at the head office from HR. So I turned to her and said, but I received a strange call here. General Cele is asking me to approach Khumalo, who's a district commissioner in Zululand, to come and work with him in Gauteng, meaning he must resign from the police and go and work in Gauteng with him for 5 years, then he will come back into the police, which was very odd. And General Hua was also confused. He said, but as far as I know, Cele didn't like Khumalo. And he made all of us at the head office to believe that Khumalo is a bad person. Why will he now suddenly want Khumalo to work with him? So it was just a strange call. I then contacted General Khumalo. He's a major general. I phoned General Khumalo and said, General Khumalo, this is a request I received from General Cele. General Khumalo just laughed and he said, well, don't worry, the general is not serious about that. So I asked him, what do you mean? He said, no, he's not serious. He wants me to back off on the case against Khan, General Khan from Crime Intelligence. So Cele is pursuing Khumalo to resign from the police so that he can stay away from the disciplinary case because he was appointed to deal with that case departmentally against General Khan. So Khumalo says, no, this is the approach of Cele to want me to back off. And that got me so upset, commissioners, that can really General Cele go to the extent of wanting a person to resign from the service because he wants to protect someone? It was very strange. I did not talk to General Cele from the day. I did not talk to him. I was very upset. It disappointed me as a person who's a former minister in the police. I was just upset. Fast forward, commissioners, the police have got 2 disciplinary processes. It's what's called expeditious, and the other one's a normal disciplinary process. Expeditious, you basically, in short, I could say, we're already saying to you, you are guilty of an offense. Come before a presiding officer to explain why you say you're not guilty, in a way. But in a normal process, the employer must present the allegations, and you have a chance to cross-examine witnesses and argue a case. And then you have a presiding officer that must decide. So the initial disciplinary procedure that was initiated for General Khan on that interference with the drug in Johannesburg was that of a expeditious process. So Khumalo was then appointed as a person who's going to preside over that. And Major General Khan approached the court granted, they overturned that and they say, no, we must go to a normal disciplinary hearing where he has a right to be represented and bring witnesses and question the witnesses and so forth. And therefore, there must be presiding officer appointed. Then General Khumalo, the Divisional Commissioner of Crime Intelligence, approached me and he asked me to be a presiding officer. I then agreed. Shortly after agreeing to be presiding officer, not long after that, I started getting this communication from Mr. Mkhwanazi. But at that time, I'm not understanding as to what this communication, what is the background of this communication. But he started communicating these things to me. That's why he throws General Khan's name in it. And later, I think, I cannot remember exact date, I think it will have been the beginning of the year, I received an inquiry. Actually, I received a phone call from the very same journalist, Mzilazo Africa. His call was, you remember the story I asked you about of what happened in Bangin? I said, yes. He said, but my colleague has just approached me, confronted me about that story, and is asking him, why didn't he publish the story? And he said, no, but there was no story there. I listened to this thing, and it just didn't make sense. Somebody is trying to peddle and frame Jerome Mkhwanazi for nothing, so I didn't publish this. And in his own words to me, Mzilaza Africa was, this colleague of his says to him, now I'm forced to publish the story. And Mzilaza found it strange, so he called me first. He said, hey, who did you upset somewhere in the police? Then I said, no, I don't know anything. They said, but is anything happening in the police that will lead people to want to publish this thing that is a year later? So old, they'd want to publish. Then I said, well, the only thing I know is that I'm going to be presiding over a disciplinary case. So he asked me, whose disciplinary case is that? I told him it's for Gerald Khan. He said, oh, no, now I connect the dots. Because my colleague and Gerald Khan are close. It could be coming from there. That is his words. Mzilikazi will come here and say that. But I told him that I'm going to talk about this. He said, no, if he's called here, he will come and talk about it. I know who the colleague is. I'm not going to say it in public. He will perhaps, if you want to divulge that, he will. That's why I'm saying there are players within the media houses that are part of. So shortly after that, I received a message from the very same colleague of Mzilikazi. He sent me a question about the same incident. I gave him a full explanation as I did here to Brian Mkhwanazi. A full explanation. A logic journalist will have understood and said, okay, well, this is just a malicious thing, and don't publish that. But that find itself to the newspaper on a Sunday. Commissioners, it is fair, that's why I like the investigative journalists. I think they're credible because they investigate first before they talk. I like the ones on TV behind cameras because they give it as is. The others that will just get information from others and write it becomes question marks, which what happened to this one.
And which Sunday publication was that?
I know the name of the journalist. I cannot remember exactly the Sunday, the paper. I don't want to, I might end up being sued if I mention the wrong name here. But I know the name of the journalist, so I can give you the name of the journalist.
You said you are not divulging it.
Yeah, I'll give you the name of the journalist, you'll write, and you'll see the trend throughout, up to now. It's the same journalist that is part of the squad. Well, there are others that are linked with him, but he's the main one. So the story goes out, commissioners, to the newspaper. It's an allegation that was made by Mkhwanazi that someone wants to open a case against me. Now, in the newspaper is my full picture there, and the big heading, allegations against Jerome Mkhwanazi defeating, and they write a story of what happened. They, of course, write my response. So, but the problem is, it is my face there, not the complainant. It's my face that is there. The heading creates question marks about my integrity as a person, as a senior officer in the province. They put my full response on the paper. So a person who reads the paper will get to understand the context of this heading and the story. They will be fine with it. But for you to get into a newspaper, must subscribe, must pay money. Some of us don't necessarily subscribe to papers. But there is social media that is free. Now on the social media, they take the heading because you are limited on what you write in there. They take the heading of allegations that Jerome Mkhwanazi is accused of defeating end of justice against a drug dealer at Kalagabusha. And that goes into their media account, social media account. And that which spreads like wildfire because people access it easy. Remember, they don't have a privilege of reading the full report that is on the paper. They are just taking it from this headline. And the picture is painted. That Mkhwanazi is a bad person. And they're achieving what they want. So I took it as a pressure for me to back off from the case that I was going to preside over, of Gerald Khan. How do I prove that? Is because Gerald Khan's lawyers, they even wrote to me on emails and said, there's these things about you on the media, so we are in doubt of your independence in dealing with Khan. They wrote to me that, and that's what they said on email. So that's when I deducted that, oh, the pressure was for me to back off on this disciplinary case. So what Khumalo told me that they were wanting him to resign because they wanted him to back off on the case. So why will they go all out to try and get us to back off on the case against Gerald Khan? I'm an independent person. Yes, I know Gerald Khumalo is my colleague, but I'm not going to go and go with what Khumalo perhaps might want to do in dealing with Khan. Mine is to follow the policy and the law. So we arrive in a
You simply responded to the journalist's questions, and you did not engage the journalist on what what Africa had said, which was that this journalist was saying they were under pressure to publish the story. You did not engage the journalist on that.
No, I didn't. I didn't engage a journalist, Commissioner. I only gave a full response on the question he asked me. Gave a full response. He took that response as is to the paper. But the problem is, my photo and everything is there. So the damage is going to be there either way. Whether I'm responding, but my face is already on the paper. And on the social media account, that short summary of it, it's the one that is trending. Not the full response that I provided. It's not there on social media. So, which means they achieved what they wanted. Paint me a bad person. And you can Google, you'll find me protecting criminals, drug dealers of Kalagabusha. It's there.
And
Which
those captions usually attract me to stories, but when I scroll down, I can't read because it requires that I be a subscriber.
Subscribe.
Which most of the time I'm not.
The same as me, Commissioner, majority of the people in the country, they don't necessarily subscribe to papers, but they rely on that first caption and makes a story. Maybe 2 days later, they put a full story when it's old, then you can read it without having to pay. But it's all news by then. So, and I could see that the whole idea was just, let's tarnish this man's image. And that's all. So that's what they did. They created the doubt. So fast forward, the disciplinary case comes, and I believe I was fair to Gerald Khan. Despite the allegations that came from IPID, I still protected his rights. I allowed him to bring his lawyers in there. I sat and I listened to the evidence that was provided.